therefore, as much control over who they are and who we are, and in the world. And we're at that moment where we get to decide, partly through the ballot, but also through the influence that we can bring to bear on our so-called leaders, as to who we are as a people. I mean, it isn't just what kind of tax policy we're going to have, but really what kind of people we are. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've had a few moments like that. I mean, think at the when Roosevelt was first elected, that was a moment when Americans were making decisions on who they were as a people, how they were going to treat each other, and how they were going to treat the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. That's a really rare moment in anyone's history, and America has periodically had those moments, and I think here we are again in one of those moments. And it isn't just because we happen to have an election between a relatively conservative Republican and two relatively liberal Democrats running for president. It's also because we're looking at values here. Mm-hmm. Which set of values are we going to subscribe to as a people? And they're all rather clear. Normally things get muddied and everybody gathers in the middle. Mm-hmm. But here they aren't so muddied, and they're rather clear cut, I think, in many ways. And it isn't, as I said, just a matter of choosing one policy over another. It's also a matter of choosing what kind of human beings we're going to be as we move into the next few decades.
Now, pursuant to that, you said to me, you and I were on the phone a few days ago. It was quite late in the evening, and we were, I forget what started the conversation, but somewhere in there, you started talking about something that I really was terribly interested in, and I want to get back to that. You said that one of your, if I remember correctly, you said one of your greatest personal goals is to get beyond preaching to the converted, to be able to reach out and touch those who may disagree with you in a spirit of kind of fellowship.
Yeah, exactly. I think that so much of the time we just simply talk to each other or preach to the choir. Conservatives talk to conservatives and moan and bemoan anyone who's not a conservative, and the left does the same thing. And there's not much shared perspectives, and not much attempt to cross over and be heard by those who don't necessarily agree with us. Most of the time, I like to think when I have a political conversation or conversation about history that I can have it with my family and with friends of mine who don't necessarily agree with me, and I try to talk that way about these issues. And I find that most of the time, people of goodwill will hear you. Mm-hmm. They may not agree with you, but they may agree with you a little bit more at the end of the dinner or the end of the evening. And I hope this book has some of that quality, that it's conversational, I hope it's friendly. I mean for it to be friendly and open-minded. And because to me it's useless to sit around and just talk to people who already agree with me. And so that doesn't change anything. That doesn't have any impact on me either. It just kind of confirms my own biases in many ways. And so I hope this book reflects that desire on my part.
And perhaps the vision that you do present here of us as Americans, that this vision that is, of this kind of creative and productive identity crisis that seems to be ours.
Our moment, yeah.
Is not is something that could be embraced by people of differing political viewpoints. Is that part of it? Yeah.
I don't see why that isn't possible. In fact, that's really my intention and desire with this book, as it is in almost any conversation I might have of a political nature. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying doesn't sound fixed and irrational or defensive in any way, but reasonable and I
Now at Seven Stories, we are an engaged publisher. We like to think of books as tools. We think of books as postcards, from travels, but also as tools toward activism. And at this historical moment, you do have, even in the context of this political season, you have some of the candidates and people saying that, yeah, sure, vote for me, but I can't do it on my own. We need a more engaged citizenry. And do you think that is it overreaching for me to suggest that this is a book that would encourage that kind of engaged participation?
Well, I hope so, Dan. I'm not a revolutionary, and one of the reasons I'm not a revolutionary is because because I'm such a skeptic. I don't really believe things change at the center. But I'm not wholly a skeptic, because I do believe that change occurs at the edges and then slowly works its way into the center, and that's how change really occurs. And a book is probably the main information delivery system that makes change at the edges. More than a film, even. When a person sits down alone and in silence, reads a book and hears a voice that's friendly and open and accommodating in many ways, and internalizes that, a person usually, or certainly in most cases, is able to question himself or herself and maybe change how they view the world at large. I know it's happened to me hundreds and hundreds of times over my lifetime, that my view of the world has been changed by sitting in a quiet room reading a book. And that's changed my behavior, and it's changed my belief systems in various ways, and it's made me a more active person in ways I wouldn't have been otherwise. So, yeah, I hope this book does have a kind of effect out there at the very edges where the individual sits in a chair, and doesn't necessarily turn that person into into storming the barricades, but just having another conversation with another person next to him the next day, and then another, and then another, and then another, and then slowly change works its way into the center. Because ultimately, how we believe and how we feel about ourselves as a community, as a nation, is going to affect how we vote, who we vote for, what policies we support or reject. And that's the kind of activism that a democracy makes us a self-creating people, and makes us so rare on this planet.
I'm going to stop there. I have other questions, but that's beautifully said and a lot to think about. Thank you, Russell.